Welcome, everybody, to If I May, a podcast with me, Nick, an average guy, along with three of my average friends, Brent, Dylan, and Kyle. This week, we'll be touching on parenting, as well as the YouTube channels of some very popular streamers, and how the parenting is a very important factor in maybe some not so classy folks on YouTube who could use a little bit of parenting. After which, we're going to move into the re-entry game, which is on Steam. Kyle's a big fan of. From there, we're going to pivot to space. Space. It's always very exciting and endless, literally. With that, we have the technology from going into space and how that affects our day-to-day lives. As far as space is concerned, we can nicely segue into pushing the human limits vertically, up and down, a little mountain climbing, as well as some diving. Touched on a few casualties this year, unfortunately, but we talk about the draw and some of the issues with wanting to climb the tallest mountain in the world. Next, we'll touch on the trans competition. Is it fair? Some NCAA athletes who used to be one gender have since changed gender and are having a lot of success. Is that fair based on the biology of the situation? We talk about the distribution of everything going on there. It gets a little interesting. Lastly, Dylan was not with us last week, and we need his top 5. That will be our finale. This is episode 51. Let's go.
Quick announcement before we begin. We will no longer be uploading the podcast to YouTube anymore. It's one of those things where we're trying to keep this fun and exciting for us, and uploading to YouTube adds a little bit extra logistics to the making of the podcast. So if you're a YouTube listener, we apologize, but we will make sure we include some links in the description for you to be able to find us in a bunch of other platforms. So we'll make sure that you're not left behind. But going forward, until we get to a lot of people demanding it, or a couple hundred views an episode, we'll likely not be uploading the podcast to YouTube.
I'm reading an article right now where it says it's about how top gamers earn up to $15,000 an hour.
Of on stage time or total? Of because their practice and stuff.
On stage time.
Yeah.
Is that stage time?
If you think about it, most competitive games don't.
But this is on Twitch. This is like streamers.
Oh.
Yeah, top streamers, not
top
like
streamers.
So I meant like League of Legends players, because most pro games are under 45 minutes. So I guess that kind of that would make sense to me, because they quote unquote work 2 hours a week or something like that.
No, I think you talk like Ninja or I don't know, they're top streamers. Is it fair how they get is it kids that are giving them money, or is it adults like our age or older that are giving
according
these people
to
money?
Twitch's terms of service.
Well, that doesn't count. Nobody reads those.
What do you mean gives these people money?
Well, so one of the ways they make the top money, like Ninja or top streamers, you'll give money and then they'll read hey, thank you, blah blah blah, for donating this amount of money.
Like Patreon supporters?
Well, kind of, except it's one of those things where literally a lot of, especially the big streamers, will have a cutoff where you have to pay at least $5 for me to read off whatever you send in. There's literally different levels. So one level is if you do at least $5 or whatever they have it set to, it'll show whatever you typed in on the screen, and a robot voice will read it out loud and be like, "Oh, you suck." Da 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 da. Ha 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 ha.
From what I'm reading is that the actual money is not made by people donating. It's actually by sponsoring companies and basically advertising for them. So here's the article. It says multiple sources at Hollywood agencies tell THR that per hour rates for endorsing a company during a live stream can reach as high as 5 figures for the most popular gamers. On average, a gamer can make anywhere from a couple thousand to 15,000 per hour.
That's if you're one of the high-end streamers.
Right, you have to be one of the high. First off, you have to have the fan base. Second, you have to have a good stream where everyone's going to be interested in watching you.
You have to be consistent too. If you're just randomly on whenever you're normally gaming,
there's no way you can do it.
There's no way you can. But if you say, "Hey, I'll be on every single Thursday at this time," like the podcast, it releases every single Thursday in the morning. It's a consistency thing, though. Everybody at least knows. It doesn't matter how frequently you do it, as long as you're consistent with when you do it. I think, from what I've heard, that's the main thing.
Yeah, and I'm on the Hollywood a website called the Hollywood Reporter. I don't know how accurate this is, but it says a brand's overall commitment to a single streamer could total as much as $500,000. That's a lot of money, dude.
That is a lot. For how much time, though? Like, if a streamer,
Yeah, exactly.
if somebody
I don't know.
if you're like a ninja, like Ninja's, I think, a terrible example, but like for me, we'll say, I don't really stream anything, but if I were to start streaming and somebody gave me $500,000, like, what's the expectation for the amount of time
I feel
to
like
continue to advertise? Like,
feel
that's
like
a full year.
$500,000.
That's a couple of years for me personally.
Well, yeah, but I think 500,000 is. I think what they're talking about is like their overall expense, or like how much money they've spent on one person overall through like the time that they've been sponsoring this person.
Still,
So they're
like,
saying like their investment in that person could be as much as $500,000.
even
which
that's over the
who
course
knows,
of 5 years.
that could
That's
be
100K
5, 10
salary.
years. But yeah, that's a lot of money.
That's so much money.
Do you think it gets tiring after a while, though? I mean, think about it. If your life is playing video games, won't that
Talking to a camera with a chat next to you, and that's like your like I don't know how you have a social life if you're that popular online.
Well,
that is your social life?
Yeah, right. I think it's got to be. It turns into one of those things where you would have to be in it for like the returners, where like the people that are diehards that visit you, are on your stream every single night or whatever. That way you can be like, okay, like I know this guy. Like,
well, hold on. You guys are questioning the social life aspect, correct?
Yeah.
If I may, I think it's a lot like any other job. Think about primetime viewership. Like when it comes to television, there are big nights. One will typically come in and watch a show. All you have to do is schedule your time, because someone, and maybe I'm wrong because frankly I don't know enough to categorize these top people I'm about to mention, but if you're a ninja, if you're awesome streamer number one who all the kids love and can do Fortnite dances in between the games to keep them entertained or whatever, like you have to be successful, you have to have a schedule, and you make that schedule. And ultimately you're going to have feedback stats because you're getting paid off of it as far as views. If you know that you stream 5 nights a week and that only 3 of those nights are really big, probably if you're a ninja, move to only doing those 3 nights. Like if the viewership isn't there for the other nights, or if you're not making enough money and you want to make more, hey, guess what? On Tuesdays, now we're going to be picking up this kind of an opportunity. We're going to be, playing a different game, or that's how you expand your business. But your time streaming, when you get to a certain level, it needs to be scheduled in order to have a fan base show up. Your Game of Thrones, it's on at Sunday at 8:00, and it's a big deal. If you're a kid and you're watching Ninja, it's not like Ninja's always on, because that's not a big deal, but it's like Friday night from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, Ninja's on. Like, holy crap, we got to watch Ninja. Whatever. But your hours are going to be limited in the sense that you're going to only stream during certain hours, and it's only going to be a few hotspots unless you're trying to diversify or you just really enjoy doing it, which obviously I'm sure they do to some extent, but balancing out the casual play versus the professional play, I would doubt that someone who's getting paid like a ninja is going to be having very sporadic showings, if you will.
Yeah,
Does that make
say,
sense?
if I may, I think Ninja's in that 1% that could do that, can exactly like set his own schedule. I think if anybody wants to become a top streamer like that, number one, you have to be almost streaming the 5 nights a week plus on the weekends. Conveniently, if you do get to Ninja's level, then yeah, you set your own schedule. Be like, Tuesdays and Thursdays are Fortnite. Mondays are my thing. I'm going to play whatever game I feel like playing. Wednesdays, I'm playing with these 2 guys because we just, whatever, like I play with these people on Wednesday. And then Friday, we're just going to hang out and chill and talk. Like we're not even going to stream a game. And then, you have more, once you get that level.
Record it and put it on YouTube. Like that's another thing is like to be a top streamer. I feel like the majority of the top streamers also have a very successful YouTube channel, and that's like part of how you get your fan base because they kind of work together.
Yeah,
Which a
and
YouTube channel is hard because it takes a lot of time and a lot of content
It's
to
the
get.
editing that's really the big thing for YouTube, right?
Yeah, because you're going through so much content because to find like the good stuff that people will actually be interested in. Like the big thing about YouTube is like there's so much content that you have to record to make a good video that's actually interesting because you can't just I learned this when I was trying to like you can't just post everything on YouTube because it just gets really boring. Like you have to take segments of really interesting stuff and piece them together, and that's where the editing comes from. So you don't realize that yes, you may be watching a 10-minute video on YouTube or 20-minute video on YouTube
It's like
or even
3 hours
longer,
of recording.
but that's like even more. Like sometimes that's like an entire day's worth of gaming and then just taking like the bits and pieces that were actually really interesting or really funny and that kind of stuff and putting them together and then releasing that. So like these guys that are streaming on a regular basis are also like recording or they're taking bits and pieces from their streams to and like taking the time to actually make like all these videos for YouTube as well. Because that's how you get like a really big fan base as well.
Well,
Most
plus
people
you can,
like it's what's that?
I was say you can also like put those like highlight reels and stuff on your Twitch stream. That way, new people can be like, okay, what he's doing right now isn't that entertaining, but here's his 10 most watched clips of him having a good time, and then you become interested. I know like back in the day for like Call of Duty, there'd be some of the top YouTubers were just the ones that they record multiple hours of gameplay for Call of Duty, and then find that 1 or 2 games that they just went off and then use those games and then record something in the background explaining whatever they're trying to do. Like, here's how I use the P90 or here's some good grenade spots, whatever. When you get to the highest levels of streaming, though, at least those guys are typically in a position where they can pay somebody to edit for them. So they literally just pay somebody to watch their stream and just automatically snag all the good clips and just edit it for them. I mean, that's where it's at, right? Where you're just literally making the content and then somebody else is doing the editing behind scenes.
Yeah, but I mean, most of the people, when you're streaming and making YouTube videos, you have to do it yourself until you get to a certain level where you can actually afford to, like, you're actually like starting a business and you can afford to hire someone to do that for you, and that takes a lot of time because you have to have a certain amount of income to be able to do that.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of income, do you guys think it's like ethical to be taking donations from people that most likely are elementary, maybe middle school level kids who most likely are using I think of like how Fortnite runs and it's all based off of skins that little Timmy bought with
mom's credit
card, and I'm sure they donate to streamers too. Is that an ethical thing, or is there something wrong with that? I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me personally.
So I say,
like,
if I may, I think that's for sure number one. Like, I see what you're saying, but I think that's number one on the parents. Like, the parents should know what their child's purchasing with their credit card. Like, my kid will definitely not, like, you can nowadays with phones, especially in like your computers, you can set up like, I need to approve all transactions from this computer or from this device. Like, I feel like parents, if kids are donating to streamers, it's theoretically on the parents in the sense that they've given consent for them to use the card. I know there's tons of cases out there where like kids have done tons of money onto streamers and stuff, or like into Minecraft games or whatever, skins, where the parents didn't know. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of on the parents too. Like, granted, if they spend it all in one night, if they spend like $3,000 in a night, okay, I can see that the parents didn't necessarily see that coming, but still, like.
So, if I may, and I could go on a rant on this for quite some time, I'm sure, but I will refrain from doing that. When it comes to, I believe there are a world of examples, and parenting, I'm told, is no easy task, and I believe it because you never really know what you're going to get, and life comes at you fast. But videos, and there have to be countless examples of a kid or kids doing something. And there's 2 examples that come to mind that I've seen on social media within the last But these kids decide they're going to be social media heroes and do something really stupid, record it, and of course, have it either live feeding to their Facebook or Instagram or what have you. Two examples I can think of is someone attempted to drop kick Arnold Schwarzenegger, like run at him.
I saw that.
And it tried to kick him in the back.
If I may, finish off your thing, but I want to go in a little bit about this once you're done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's kind of what I'm getting into. So I'll touch about the three different things that I'm thinking of. The guy tried to drop kick Arnold Schwarzenegger, failed miserably.
Man's
he
a fucking
hit him.
tank.
He hit him, and he fell to the ground. Arnold just kind of staggered a little bit, and the kid fell to the ground. Then there was a Russian politician. Now, the Russian politician, as I understand it, I think it was Russian, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but I guess he's a pretty bad guy, white supremacist. I don't know. But this kid takes an egg, and while he's giving a speech or taking questions, he's got a phone in one hand recording it, and he smacks the egg into the back of the guy's head. I think he was bald. I don't know if that makes it better or worse because less of a mess with no hair, but smacks the egg into the back of the head, and then he just holds the phone facing the dude's reaction. And I want these kids or people or whatever to get the living hell beat out of them. It's a complete lack of respect. You don't have to like you can really disagree and think he's a slimeball and a horrible person, but that doesn't give you the right to essentially do a light assault on his person. That's a bit much for an egg to the back of the head, but that's not the point. It's you can't do that. That's not normal. That's not acceptable. I don't care how much you hate the person.
Go streak at a professional soccer game like a normal person.
You are crossing a line when you get physical, and that's not okay. It's not cute. It's not funny. I want no profit to be made from people watching these videos, and it's disgusting. The other one was there was a streamer of some variety had a channel who wanted to screw with homeless people, and I think this was in Europe. But he took a pack of Oreos, took out all of the cream filling, and put in toothpaste instead.
Oh.
And he made all kinds of jokes while he was doing it about, at least they'll have clean teeth or whatever. And he gives the package of Oreos that's been doctored with toothpaste and $20 to a homeless person. And then he records them getting sick and puking and just an absolute mess. Well, the homeless person had a daughter who was a little more successful, and they sued. And I guess he's probably he was sentenced to jail time, but my understanding of their local crime system or justice system is for a non-violent first offense, you don't actually do the
slap
jail
on the
time.
wrist.
But at the same time, I'm just this is something that's becoming, if it's not already huge, it's everyone takes out their cell phones. Something's happening, and instead of dealing with it in any way, shape, or form, they just try and record it and profit off of it or whatever. I don't know, but when it comes to parenting and these kids who are just they're effed up, is how I'll put it. I wish we had a bit of a tougher old school society where, okay, that kid, you're standing in a public place, a kid, and I say kid, he's a teenager. He's old enough to know better, certainly. And it takes an egg and puts it on smacks it on the back of your head. He hit him. He slapped him and broke the egg on his head. Of course, I want to see that kid get his rear end just tossed. I want him bloody and bruised.
Dude, all right. If I may, I don't like that.
No. I'll tag team a little bit more PG off of that. But one of my favorite subreddits is called Instant Karma. And it's literally 100% that, where somebody is an ass and instantly gets revenge in whatever way. I think one of my favorite, there's a couple good ones. The one I can think of off the top of my head is there's this guy that's in a costume on I don't know, doing on the street doing performance or whatever. He's just being a costume person, doing his thing, trying to make a buck. And then some ass comes up and starts messing with him, tries to punch him, and then he just gets dropped kick by this other guy that just comes out from the side and just wrecks this guy that's screwing with this other guy that's just in a costume and pretty much defenseless because he can't see, he can't really move. It's just he was in a snowman costume. So it's like, what do you? The guy's just being a dick, and somebody just.
I'm not saying like you're gonna permanently wound somebody, but if you break the physical barrier, if I take an egg and I slap it on the back of your head as hard as I can, I have struck you. Like, I'm not saying break his arm. I'm not saying anything, but yeah, slug him, break his nose, hurt him.
He should know it's not socially acceptable to do those kind of things.
There's other ways, I think, to teach that.
No, there's not.
I do want to say a kid attacking a guy, much less like if there's retribution and a guy attacks back and it's an adult, that's gonna be so much worse on the guy who is getting back at the kid, because the story then turns from man hits kid. Yeah, and the rest of it kind of gets forgotten. But as the adult, I think society holds you to a higher level where that's not an acceptable thing. How
much feedback? It is acceptable. If he turns around, slugs him once, and stops, I hit you. If I hit you harder, you hit me first. Now, again, no, if he gets on top of him and starts railing on him, no. But it is acceptable. If you break the barrier in physical contact,
especially if the other person tries to flee.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, one Prime Video I remember seeing is, like, this older gentleman. He was, like, by older, I mean maybe, like, 40s-ish kind of thing. I don't remember exactly. It was maybe it was, like, a grandpa even. Like, it was an older gentleman. But, like, he was in a park, and this must have been happening long enough for somebody to get their cell phone out, because this older guy was trying to walk away from this, like, 10-year-old that was literally just like kicking him. He'd be like, what are you going to do about it? Kicking him. What are you going to do about it? And like this guy was just trying to walk away, and the video itself was like 2-3 minutes long. And I guess I'm not sure how long it was happening before that, but obviously long enough for somebody to get their cell phone out. But this older gentleman just like shoves this kid down to the ground. He like, smacks his butt, like falls into a wall, starts crying. And then like I don't remember exactly what happened, but I think some parents were like, oh, what the heck? But like, there's literally like 4 people that jumped up right away and be like, no, he's fine. Like, sometimes like that kid need to be put in his place. Like, you should always try to avoid the situation overall. But if somebody's not letting you avoid the situation, then yeah, just teach them a lesson if you're able to.
I'm real big on, if you cross that physical barrier first, I have a right to retaliate with what I will call slightly greater force. Like, I'm not going to say, okay,
but not persistent.
You push me. Yeah. Right. I'm not saying you push me and I can pull a gun. I'm saying you push me and I'm going to push you harder back, and I'm just going to walk away at that point. Like, if you try and punch me in the face, I'm probably going to punch back. Am I going to then just keep railing? No, I'm going to punch you, and then I'm going to step back and say, okay, do you want to keep going, or are you done? Like, this is stupid.
It's a dangerous game to play. I do want to make a point note, Nick. I just saw in the news that YouTube has banned children from streaming or like live streaming, doing that kind of video stuff without parents. So hopefully that cuts down a little bit on some of those videos you're talking about where kids are just being jerks. Because now if it's going to be on YouTube, the only way it's going to be on YouTube is if a parent is with them. Otherwise,
what does that do for teenagers? Like, where do they draw the line?
Yes, see, I don't know if that's been established yet.
Yeah, I think you technically have to be 13 to even have a YouTube account, and then I would assume that would be under 18 would be the limitation on that. But again,
it's not going to help at all.
Filling out the thing.
How does having a parent with you make that better or okay?
Well, because you're not hopefully going to be doing jerkish things if
someone can be
parent
legally
is
held
there.
Responsible.
Yeah, it's basically. You're not going to be doing things like, oh, no one's, parents aren't watching. I'm going to do whatever stuff I'm going to do. You should hopefully have somebody that's responsible. And that's a whole nother thing and a whole nother rant, I'm sure, Nick, of parents that are not responsible. And
so if I may,
difference, but
can someone tell me what the criteria is exactly to be a parent?
You have to put your genitalia into a male puts his genitalia into a female's genitalia. And you become a parent.
I don't agree.
Are you implying that there are only 2 sexes? I don't agree.
I mean, you can imply all you want, but that's how babies are made.
Okay, I want to hear Dylan's. I want to hear Dylan's first.
I've heard many stories where the stepfather is more of a dad than a father.
So I totally agree there, and you can expand more, but there's definitely a difference between being a father and being a dad.
Yes.
Same thing with mom.
I was only talking
mother.
about the criteria for having created a child to be a parent, and it's next to nothing. There are a lot of very, very bad parents is the point. And you see all kinds of idiots who end up on certain channels. What was it? Honey Boo Boo a couple years ago or whatever.
Oh boy.
Where you had the very large mother and this loser of a boyfriend and this poor child who just didn't understand and doesn't understand, I'm sure, probably never will understand.
She is a big deal. I don't know what you're talking about.
Kidding me. Actually, no. Never mind. You will be hurting my intelligence if you tell me more. I'll pass.
I have never seen an episode of Honey Boo Boo. I just have seen like the clips
Neither
that
have
are
I.
online. So back to this Arnold Schwarzenegger thing, I want to touch on just a couple of the top comments on that video, and I think these are fantastic. Feel free to jump in as you see fit for some of these comments. Attacker, flying kick. Arnold, who threw that paper on me? It says on me, not at me, whatever. Drops kick, Arnold. Arnold, stop poking me. I'll get to you in a second. Random guy gets a running start and uses all his momentum and force to drop kick Arnie. Arnold, I thought someone from the crowd just pushed me. Didn't realize it was a kick until I saw the video.
I like that one.
Drops kicking, quote unquote, elderly man, then screams for help. Way to go, tough guy.
Hey, I didn't see the actual, or I didn't watch the video with any sound or detail.
You've got to be careful with that
LMAO,
kind of stuff, though.
embarrassing. Imagine trying to drop kick a 70-plus-year-old man, not even be able to hurt him. Arnold is still a legend.
Wait, pause, if I may. How old is Arnold?
Over 70, apparently.
I believe it, actually.
He's old, dude. When's the last time you seen a picture of him? Like, he's still doing what he can, but he is getting there.
Well, all those older actors, like Samuel L. Jackson is ancient. Morgan Freeman is ancient.
Rambo. Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he's starting the Rambo movie. Have you guys seen that trailer?
Sylvester Stallone. Yeah, he's
Sylvester Stallone.
Too.
Sorry. Yeah, Sylvester Stallone.
Sylvester Stallone is.
He's getting up there.
Too.
Like, he just released a trailer for the newest Rambo. It's like Last Blood or something like that. Like, yeah. He's pretty old, man.
See, but my whole thing is that's assault.
Oh, for sure.
If the tables were reversed, he is suing Arnold for having drop kicked him, although he'd be dead. He is suing Arnold for more than half of everything he's ever earned in his career. And this kid, I'm sure.
Arnold probably said it's
absolutely
fine,
nothing.
If I had to guess. Like, from what I've never met the guy, but from what I understand about Arnold Schwarzenegger, he is like one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Like, he's full,
doesn't make it okay, I agree. But
whichever character you want him to be in front of you, he's that character for you. Like, oh, how's it going, Terminator? Oh, I'll be back. I will terminate you. Like, he's the nicest. From what I understand of him, he is like the nicest guy you will ever meet.
Yeah, he was a politician for a while, and
yeah.
I mean, you have to be likable at least to do that. You can't just have great movies. That doesn't make you, good enough. You have to actually have enough word of mouth and positive experiences with people. So that's good to hear and very, very cool. But again, I just get caught up on, okay, why is every random YouTube star not just doing shit like this to try and become as big as they can? Why are they not doing all of this? And what's the incentive not to? Doesn't sue this person, then there are going to be, this is stupid, but just for the sake of argument, there's 30 more kids lined up where whenever security's not watching, oh yeah, I'm running an Arnold and I'm taking a drop kick. Because if I take down the Terminator, my YouTube channel is going to explode with hundreds of thousands of viewers.
If I may, just to draw the Appleton connection, it's super dangerous. Harry Houdini, the famous escapist who lived a long time in Appleton, or for a while at least, he died because someone came up to him and was like, oh, one of your tricks is that you can take punches into the gut or whatever, and that's your trick. But he had to be ready for it, and he wasn't ready for it, gets kind of like sucker punched, and that did him in.
There's also rumors that he had pancreatitis at the time, and so him getting punched literally like burst his pancreas.
Yeah. So what does it have to happen? Does a celebrity have to have serious injury or die.
Doesn't have to be a
what if the guy had a
or anybody?
Had a knife?
I know, true.
What if the guy had a knife? Like,
yeah, it shouldn't happen. No, I'm saying it shouldn't happen. It's very dangerous. I do want to make an Arnold note while we're on him quick. He did just recently, as a 71-year-old, drop a rap video. So
I remember hearing about that. Maybe I'll try to find it during the podcast and play it.
It's not that good.
So I recently started playing this game called Re-Entry, and it's an orbital simulator. So it's like a full-on simulator for like the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo spacecraft, like the set of spacecraft that were initially used to go to the moon and back. So Re-Entry it's an orbital simulator, and it's literally the entire capsule. Like, you have to push every single button. I started going through it. I just started at the Mercury. Figured it makes sense to start at the base level of human space flight and start going through that and trying it out. But there's a lot of buttons in a spaceship. You know, being an astronaut and flying in space always sounds like a great time, but there's a lot of buttons in this thing. And I mean, granted, they got manuals and whatnot for you to go through, which you would theoretically have a little like cheat sheet version of that if you were actually in the capsule. But man, like, especially the Apollo, like the Mercury mission, like the Mercury capsule, I went into that one and just hit launch, like without having any training at all. And I now know that if I were to be put into a Mercury capsule and was told, you're going, I would be dead. I would be going straight up and then coming straight back down and dying.
So if I may, Kyle, is this a game that you just play by yourself, or
so it's on Steam?
Do this on their own?
I'm
wondering,
assume,
like, if an astronaut goes up, they probably have one more person helping them.
So Mercury capsule was 1-man capsule. The Gemini was 2-man, and the Apollo was 3-man. So in the Mercury capsule, it is only you. That's like the whole Alan Shepard, like very first American anyway to orbit the Earth. That was the Mercury missions in general, was just to achieve orbit. Gemini, they had a couple other objectives, such as trying to like figure out how do we like even maneuver in space. So they had like 2 of them launched at the same time and docked together. They had the very first spacewalk, or I think it was the very first, otherwise second behind Russia. But really, until the Apollo, we were really behind Russia, kind of just trying to figure out how to do the whole space thing. And yeah, so Mercury was just get into orbit. Gemini was kind of figure out how to move in space and what's kind of possible in space. And then Apollo, its main goal was to get to the moon and come back. So, but going through this, right? Like 3 different programs, and it was all, Kennedy's whole speech thing. And it was literally, they made it through before the decade was out, and very impressive. And it actually, the Apollo mission, I've been getting, since I started playing this game, which you can find on Steam if you're interested. I think it's like $20-$30. It's fairly cheap. But since playing this game, I've been kind of getting into it because I've been like going through the startup procedures and like figuring out exactly what button to push when, and like just going through the Mercury missions, which I haven't gotten very far. I haven't hit orbit yet, but there's a lot of stuff to figure out and remember. But it's crazy that the Apollo mission actually, like the whole Apollo program, cost nowhere even close to like the Iraq-Iran-Afghanistan war. Like that war was astronomically expensive compared to the Apollo missions. I think the Apollo program in general cost like a little bit more than the F-22 Raptor cost, and that was literally for just a fighter jet for the United States, which, to be fair to the F-22 Raptor, it's still really badass and one of the top jets in the sky still today even. But yeah, it's just crazy that it didn't actually cost that much of a budget, even just for inflation, compared to some of the other stuff that the government has going on as far as giant programs. But yeah, playing this Re-Entry program or game, it's kind of a new level of respect for astronauts and what they go through. If you're looking for a low end or a more entry level astronaut simulation game, Kerbal Space Program is my all-time favorite, probably game ever, next to maybe League of Legends. But yeah, I don't know what the whistle meant.
It is a good game though.
Yeah, Kerbal Space Program is fantastic. It is so much fun, especially as an engineer and nerding out, and always have been loving space since I was a kid. To your very first time it's a realistic physics simulator as well for Kerbal Space Program. So like you can fly jets and whatnot, and you build your own spacecraft. And I remember the very first time, even getting into orbit, you're like such success, and then like landing on the moon. My very first time landing on the Mun, as they call it in the game, there's no chance of return, but just landing on it was just like, oh my god! Like if you're at all interested in space and like the sandboxy kind of games. Like if you like Legos growing up as a kid and would make your own stuff, you will love Kerbal Space Program. And it's currently on sale on Steam as well. I think it's only like $10 right now because they just released a DLC pack.
So Kyle, how much would you? I know like private space flights are going to be a thing, and you've had an interest in space. How much would you pay to have the opportunity to go up in space, like as a private citizen?
So I think that's a tough
there a price
question.
that you would put up, or
as a proportion of my net worth, I think it would be 10%. Yeah, like I don't think it makes sense, or like for a year. Like I would probably do like, I don't know. I don't know. Again, it would depend on where I'm at the situation. Like right now, if you said pay for your way into space right now, like how much you'd be willing to spend? I mean, I would say my savings account. Like I would love to go because I know that'll be built up, and I'm in a position now where I wouldn't be too worried about my savings account getting rebuilt up, or maybe half my savings account is what I might be willing to pay right now at this very moment. Would that ever get me into space? Absolutely not. Like it's not even close. Like for the shuttle missions, I think it was like $1 million per pound of payload, including the astronauts. Like $1 million per pound to get into space on the shuttle, which was, I wrote a whole paper about this, but literally you could send 3 missions to Mars for the cost of 1 shuttle mission. But it's really expensive to get into space currently. If it ever comes down, if Elon Musk can do his thing and get it to be actually viable for not pedestrians, for the common citizen to be able to pay their way into space, yeah, I'd love to if it's close to affordable for me. But yeah, it would have to be proved out as well. I mean, the very first teacher in space didn't work out too well for her, but, you know, I would love to go if I had the opportunity.
Wait, what happened to the teacher in space?
So this was in the 80s in the shuttle mission, and technically it was like the third flight of a citizen in space. Like the first 2, one of them was like some crazy scientist, the other one was some like really rich prince or something like that over in some Dubai prince or something like that. But in the 80s, they were trying to get some like revamp of interest into the space program, and I forgot her name. Let me see if I can find it. I'm literally in the process of watching a documentary about it right now. It doesn't say it in the description. I don't want to be clicking around, but the NASA decided that they were going to try to interest the public more into space via the shuttles by basically holding a competition and saying, hey, we're going to send a teacher into space. Number 1, to just get public interest more into space, but then also number 2, they could get more confidence in the space program. And it was Christina McAuliffe. Sure, something like that. I've heard it both ways. But yeah. So, and then also she could also, while she's up there, kind of educate the public about what they're currently doing. And, you know, it was a cool thing as well. It's kind of showing that space is becoming more of an everyday thing. It's not just for the astronauts anymore. But essentially, from previous missions, they knew that there was an issue with the gaskets in the boosters on the side of the shuttle, and when they got really cold, because there's basically just 2 giant O-rings in these boosters connecting the boosters together. The boosters are in multiple parts, and there's 2 gaskets that seal those parts from leaking. And when it's really cold, gaskets being made out of like an O-ring being made out of like a rubber material does not spring back the way it should when it's cold. And so they launched the shuttle in the morning when it was like 30 degrees out, and the gaskets fail and it blew up. And all 7 astronauts died in that explosion. And because of it being the first teacher in space, it was broadcast across the world and across the country. Like this documentary I'm watching, like, has footage of literally her school that she taught at, and like all the kids are like in the assembly room watching the launch. You know, they launch up, they're so excited. They get past max Q, which as you're launching through the atmosphere and getting faster and faster, the pressure of the air around you becomes greater and greater until you get to a certain point, and the atmosphere starts thinning out relative to your speed. And then, you know, max Q is basically the most amount of force being put onto the spacecraft while it's going up. And they got past that point, which means they're a go for throttle up. They throttled up, and it didn't work out too well. And yeah, unfortunately, because the space shuttle is literally right on top of a tank of explosives, it went away very quickly. They did actually even predicted that they think from footage that the crew capsule itself likely survived, and they actually died from impact to the ocean. It's like, dang,
I've heard that.
That would suck. But go ahead.
Have we? Are you? Is that like? I'm gonna move on to another. Are you done? Like, is that it?
Oh, I can talk about space for a long time, so we'll call it good for this episode.
I wanted to keep talking about space. I was just wondering, have we ever talked about Virgin Galactic? I feel like we have.
No, what is that?
Basically, it's like you were saying, a company that's focusing on bringing civilians into space, like as a tourism thing. So if you look up Virgin Galactic, they're test flying this modular vehicle that they've created, and it's like basically brought up super high altitude, kind of like on a glider. The space vehicle is brought up as high as possible, and then they release the actual vehicle itself, and then it shoots up on a rocket up into space, and then they basically fly back down. They glide back down, and then glide back down to a landing because they're out of fuel. But they just tested it with passenger for the first time. And this I'm on their space.com, and this was written in February of 2019, so pretty recent. I don't know what they've done since then. Obviously, it's been a couple months, but since February they've brought someone into space already, and I was looking at the price because we were talking about like how much you would pay to fly into space. And here it says that they're planning on carrying space tourists on suborbital flights for $250,000 a piece. So for $250,000, you can fly to space.
There you go. I would say that's really reasonable, actually, for the kind of effort and research that goes into, like, just think from an engineering standpoint, like the amount of complexity into these devices, or, you know, these machines really that take you into space is just ridiculous. Like, one of the most ridiculous things I know about spacecraft is, like, if you look at the nozzles of their engines, there's like tubing around them. They literally pump the fuel that's about to be burned around the nozzle of the engine. Number one, it cools off the nozzle so that way the nozzle doesn't overheat, but it also preheats the fuel so that it burns more efficiently. But it's just like, I got an idea. Let's take the fuel and just put it right next to the explosion, and, well, it'll help us. But it's just the ridiculous engineering stuff like that goes into space flight. That's just amazing.
So Kyle, does that technology ever come down to the people that are not in space but back on Earth?
Have you heard of Velcro?
I'm sure. Well, I know like Velcro, but like,
have you heard of a tube of toothpaste?
That's a space invention? I didn't know that.
That type of packing. There's so many things like that. Have you heard of computers before? Like, there's so many things that have been invented primarily for space, or initially anyway, for space, that have become commercial products nowadays.
If I may, that was a big conversation topic with, is it Ben Carson? Or is it another?
Some politician. No.
You're right. I think Ben Carson's a politician. I'm thinking of Neil deGrasse Tyson. That one.
That guy. Scientist.
Dude, yeah, scientist. Very different from the other guy.
Mike Tyson.
Both. Yeah, I'm probably racist for mixing those two up. But at any rate, he was on the Joe Rogan. Not quite. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and they were talking about where our energy should be spent for investment in technology. And it was really interesting, the conversation they had where they went back and forth and said a lot of the greatest inventions for mankind were made for space initially. Someone in the government turned around and was like, wait, you can do what? Oh yeah, we have this telescope for, looking at the stars. It allows you to see really, really far. Well, now, okay, now this is used for military and naval purposes to be able to see enemies and other things from very far away. Taking all of those kinds of, and he had a list. I don't remember most of them because I'm not
here's from NASA.gov. Here's 20 things we would not. You can finish first, but then I'll read through this list of 20 things we wouldn't have because of space travel.
Yeah, the only last note I'll have is they went into the military aspect where something was made for space purposes or for space travel or the betterment of humankind, and the military gets their hands on it and turns around and says, "Oh, we can use that to blow each other up more effectively," or whatever it is the military does. But yeah, go ahead.
So camera phones for the space, they needed cameras as light and as small as possible because, again, with any spacecraft, the more something weighs, the more expensive it is, and especially as well as for big things. Like the bigger and heavier things are, more expensive. So everything, a lot of stuff for space in general was light and small. So camera phones, scratch-resistant lenses, they needed that for the space helmets so they could still see. CAT scans, digital scanning with imaging. LEDs, just straight up LED lights, which are now every single monitor in existence. Okay, that was interesting. Landmine removal. It's producing a flare that can safely destroy landmines. Athletic shoes. Nike Air trainers wouldn't exist if it weren't for suit construction technology developed by NASA. Foil blankets. So like those, the foil blankets that are for like emergency situations. Water purification systems. Just before that, you had iodine tablets, and that's about it. Dust busters. So NASA approached Black & Decker to develop a lightweight device to collect samples on the moon. That's pretty much now called a vacuum cleaner.
That's a good one.
Which, to me, actually, initially doesn't make sense because the whole lack of air thing.
They hadn't been in space probably, but at that time.
They used that same technology, though, to create the dust buster. So that's what it is. So the technology they used to collect samples on the moon was the same thing they used to create a dust buster. Ear thermometers. Home insulation. They worked a lot with insulation because in space, if you're in the sun, you're like plus 400 degrees Celsius, and if you're, or Fahrenheit, whatever, plus a lot. And if you're in the shade, you're minus 400 degrees, just because there's that big of a difference. So like literally, if you were just naked in space, whatever side of your body is facing the sun would be instantly fried, and the other side would be instantly frozen. The jaws of life for cars, wireless headsets, memory foam, freeze-dried food, adjustable smoke detector, baby formula, artificial limbs, computer mouse, and portable computer.
Jeez.
So if you heard or use any of those, you can thank space and the space programs. And that's just 20 of the, more relevant ones. But yeah, it's just so much stuff was invented because of the need to get lighter, smaller for space. Man,
you know what I need to do though? Speaking of lighter,
if I may, this is gonna be one of Brent's fantastic segues. Continue.
I have it. If I may, before that.
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
If I may, Dylan, did you listen to last week's episode?
I have not, sadly.
So here is your task while we listen to Brent's lovely segue. We did a thing at the end of the episode last week.
Oh yes, this was genius.
Where it's called the top 5, and what it is up to you. Ultimately, you pick a top 5 of whatever, and you don't tell us what the theme is. We have to guess what it is based on you listing out those top 5 things. So I believe Brent's was
don't even tell them. Don't ruin it. That way you can go back and listen. But like for an example, I could say blue, orange, black, green, red. And you
obviously top colors.
Top colors, exactly. That's just an example. So like, get your top 5
Actually,
list.
You guys bring up a good point. As I do this segue, I will make my own quick top 5.
No, Brent, you already did it.
But it's not a guessing one. I actually do have It is relevant. So you talk about how technology is being increased in space to be lighter, to be more efficient, and I realized the importance of that as I went on my backpacking trip this weekend. And we backpacked. We probably packed a little bit too late. And here are the top 5 things that I would wish I would have had lighter supplies of that really weighed on me as I did our 5-mile hike into camp. Sleeping bag. Had a giant sleeping bag. Super big, super bulky. Should have got a smaller one. Tent. Instead of having a nice 2-person tent for 2 people, brought a 3-person tent. Where was the other person? They could have carried it. Food. We just kind of grabbed a whole bunch of random
your
snacks.
plan was to get a 3-man tent and just have your 3rd person carry it?
No, I don't know. We only had 2 people, but we have it folds really nicely. It fits my backpack, but it's heavy. It's surprisingly heavy. And if you're backpacking, you want a really light tent. Like, you don't want all your weight being in the tent. But because it was a bigger tent meant for 3 people, and it fits 3 or 4 people if you really wanted to get people in there, it was really heavy. I'd wanted to bring a lighter water filter. Our water filter works really good, but it does add quite a bit of weight. Pots. We brought probably 2 pots or 3 pots that we didn't need to bring, and that adds up. I mean, that's one of the things I didn't think about is the more stuff you bring, the heavier it gets.
That's
learning. I am
strategy.
learning about that. But having a lighter pot would have been great. And then I don't know if this even exists, but a lighter like fuel source for a camping cooking stove. Like ours wasn't
the MSR Pocket Rocket 2.
Was that the way to go? Because
that's
ours
the one you want.
It's decently light, but it's kind of bigger, bulky, and it's still like I want lighter fuel. I mean, if I'm gonna just like a rocket, if you have to get up to space, I want to get up that mountain.
Yeah, Brent.
So that's my segue. Is I believe this technology actually exists to have lighter backpacking stuff, but I just felt it was kind of like you talking about. Oh, everything has to be lighter for space. Well, I learned quickly that it should be lighter for backpacking as well.
I would say from my backpacking experience, there are really high-end stuff, that you can buy that is really expensive and very light. Like you can get tents that are literally in the ounces, like a pound or less, but they're going to cost you $300 some bucks. It's going to be a 2-person tent, and it's going to assume that you're using your own like hiking poles as the poles of the tent. So like there's some crazy lights.
Gosh.
Oh yeah. And it's so light that it'll also rip easily. So you also have to be more careful with it in general. So like there's some hardcore people that'll go down like the AT trail, like the Appalachian Trail, which is the longest hiking trail, longest continuous hiking trail in America or the world maybe even. But like people go down that trail with like 30 pounds total on their back, and it's literally everything they need. But it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to get that light. But yeah, as far as cooking stove or like the pots, I got a really nice, I actually won through one of my company had like a winter party, and I won a nice camping kit. It literally has just like a little pot to boil water in, and then a couple cups inside of it to like put your stuff in it, like to put your cups and utensils and whatnot in it. And it also will fit the fuel source for an MSR Pocket Rocket. And if you haven't heard of that thing, just go on Amazon. They're like $45. It is the lightest. And there's knockoffs too that are a little cheaper if you want to go towards the cheaper route that work just as fine. But the MSR Pocket Rocket 2 is amazing, and the fuel is puny, and you can boil easily enough water for 2-3 people worth of a meal in a couple minutes.
Oh, that's kind of what we have. We just had a bigger fuel thing for the Pocket Rocket. Those work really nice. I do want to do one last note, and then let's get to Dylan's top 5. You've had enough time, Dylan, so no worries on that.
I've got a little a side note or two about being a horrible human being that I posted in the notes while we wait for Dylan to continue to gather.
All right. I'll do my quick thing then. Now let's get to your. Yes, I like that. So here we go. One thing we did was we hiked up to as far like high as this big lake, and it was right on the edge of like the place to go. The thing is, the way to get to the place to go in the enchantments, the core zone, is you have to get through something known as the Asgard Path. And we slept pretty close to it, a safe distance away, but I will say at night we heard a rock slide going down from the path. So I'm kind of glad we didn't go. And as I leave the enchantments today, I look at a sign, and it said, if you were to go up to the Asgard Pass, the toilets there are all covered with snow. So you have to literally carry all of your waste, like human excrement, out with you. And I thought about that. I'm like, I'm really glad. Like,
Oh, it
I
was just
didn't
not
have
possible to
that.
bury it 6 or 8 inches or whatever.
Well, they want to. It's not allowed to bury. You have to use the toilets at this place because it's a pristine, top notch. I mean, as nice as any national park, national forest land kind of stuff. So they're like, yeah, if you were to go up to the Asgard Pass after that, you'd have to bring everything back with you. And after reading that, I was relieved, and that we didn't bring our relief. Okay, what do you got, Nick?
So, while I was reading the news throughout the day, two themes that came up. One could be a good discussion point, but I'll just throw it out there and we can keep it pretty short. Number one, have you heard about all of the climbers who've died this year?
There was a bunch that just
record number of.
Yeah, Mount Everest. They lost like 7 or 8 people in one weekend or something like that, and I think
like
they lost another
just
couple.
This past weekend. Honestly, they lost another 8, or like 6 to 8.
I'm sitting here and I'm saying to myself, okay, into hiking and adventuring. Like I like it to some extent, but the idea of pushing the envelope just has never been attractive to me in that sense. I feel bad for the families who lost their loved ones, but at the same time, I'm sitting here like, expect. Like you can't just go do things like that and amazingly think you're just so awesome it's going to work out.
Yeah, so
what are your thoughts?
If I may, this is mostly a Nepal / the Sherpas fault, I would think. Number one, people are stupid and they shouldn't be climbing Everest, especially if they're not qualified or have done other things. But from my understanding, they're basically giving out passes to anybody who can afford them. So if you can afford the, whatever licensing or, certification, or not certification, but like what's like a deer hunting license? Like if you can afford the license to go climb Everest, they're just handing them out. They're not limiting the number. And so it sounds like the vast majority of the people climbing Everest that are dying are because there's literally just, they're waiting for other people in front of them to get out of their way so they can continue climbing. So like once you get above a certain like elevation, you just start dying. There's literally nothing you can, like your body, human body is not meant to survive above a certain level of, or below a certain level of oxygen. So as the people are just getting bottlenecked because there's literally just so many people climbing the damn mountain that people are dying because they can't go up and down fast enough to not die because the human body just literally can't survive that long. So number one, Nepal / the Sherpas, I would say it's Nepal probably mainly is the issue in not regulating how many of these licenses they give out. Number two, if you're not prepared, you shouldn't be able to go. There should be a stringent, like if you have to have so many prerequisites or so many other above certain, I know there's more peaks out there, like K5 I know is another popular mountain to climb. Not as popular because it's not the highest, but technically it's a much more difficult mountain to climb.
Well, it's like flying. It's like flying. They don't let you fly if you don't have a certain number of flight hours.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Like, I feel like if you're going for something like that, you have to have documented log and proof that you've done enough to qualify you to be there. And then on top of that, you should go on a waiting list and they should only allow so many people per year be able to do it. And then maybe even before you go, you have to prove yourself through a physical endurance test of some sort. Like, check your O2 levels. There's lots of tests out there that can show how quote unquote in shape you are. And, between being in shape and having the experience, those should be limiting factors besides just having $100,000 that you can blow to have somebody escort you up the mountain.
I struggle with the mentality, and I get people want to push the limits, but whether it's, climbing these mountains or like deep sea diving, that's another one where you see people pushing the limits, trying to go lower than anyone else,
not quite as popular, that one.
Not as popular, no, but the same in general. Like you want to go deeper, you want to go further into this cave, you want to whatever, and you push and you die. I think in the same article they're talking about all the climbers dying. There was some lady who had already scaled Everest like 8 times. And it's like, why? Gain by climbing this mountain.
Yeah, if you've done it max of 3 times, like I can understand maybe wanting to do it again with like your younger sibling or, something like that. But yeah, once you've done it 3 times, we'll call it. If you've done it 3 times, you're done. You don't need to climb Everest again.
I just don't understand the point. It's kind of like, okay, well, what do you expect? And I'll segue that into the other article that I just stumbled across today. And it involves one of my favorite memes, if you're familiar with Jake from State Farm. And a man is sitting up in the middle of the night, some 2 o'clock in the morning. I know you're going
and
with this. He's on the phone, and his wife
sounds hideous.
Downstairs and snatches the phone out of his hands and, what are you doing? Who is she? Like he's cheating on her or something. Grabs the phone, and good old Jake from State Farm is there wearing his khakis and his red shirt, which became iconic as part of the meme. And the wife looks at the husband and says, well, she sounds hideous. And the man looks over just kind of pitifully like, well, she's a man. So there's that. Which leads me into my article today.
Very tasteful segue, Nick.
Transgender woman that competed as a man in 2018 wins women's NCAA track championship
number
in 2019.
1 and number 2. Did you see that?
So number 1 and number 2?
The number 1 and number 2 finishers were trans.
Yeah, well, she's a man, so anyway.
I never said boy or girl, I said trans.
There's a lovely picture within the article where the individual who won is in the middle, and then there's 2 women on either side of him. The individual. Them just have looks on their faces that are so priceless. And all I can think of is the scene where the husband just looks at his wife. Well, she's a man, so like, how are you what you said 1 and 2 were the ones who were both transgender, and then like how do you explain to somebody, yeah, I took 3rd, but I was the only one who was actually a woman,
biologically female? Yeah, this is a big deal. I think Brent will have the best take on that from his track experience, but like sports in general, I think I understand why they're trying to be liberal / understanding, / whatever. I understand why they're trying to be accepting of transgender and whatnot, but when it comes to an athletic event and biological men, just from the science of it, have an advantage over biological females, I think there has to be a line drawn. Like, I'm trying to think if there's somewhere where I would be okay with an exception. I mean, maybe something to the effect of if you've competed competitively as a man, you then cannot switch to woman, because then you're putting yourself in a much bigger advantage that way. Or maybe if you start hormones at a certain point. I guess I don't fully know the science of the transgendering of a man into a female. But yeah, I remember seeing a news article where I think is the person that came in 5th or something like that was, getting interviewed, and she's like, it really sucks when you come up to the line and out of the 8 of you, who's already going to be 1 and 2, and everybody's competing for 3rd. It's just...
Well, to be fair though, there are, even in situations that don't have trans, you sometimes get that, where there's just an athlete that's going to be way better than you.
Yeah,
like, but I think at state meets, there's the guy who's going to win, and you go on the line and you're like, it doesn't matter how good I am, this guy is just better than me.
Yeah, that's and the guys won this year, both of them.
Well,
and colleges don't care. Colleges don't care if you're 3 through 5th, or I guess maybe even 3rd. But if you're not top 3 in the state meet, you're not necessarily being seriously looked at for full scholarships kind of level. That you weren't number 1 or 2 or 3, whatever. Like, I'm not interested. And plus, those two biological males took out two other biological female spots potentially. There's two other what would be really interesting to look at is how many total biological males entered into track for the year versus what percentage of those are in the finals.
I would be interested, in that one. To
right?
see if every male goes straight to the top, which, as far as what I know about running in the sport and what have you, that would make sense. But if that's not the case, I would be interested to see the stats.
If an equal portion of biological males did not make it, as far as the same portion as biological females, then I
could support it.
Then I could support it, and I would say that sport is okay to have biological males and females mixed. If the proportion, especially over any period of time, shows that that's not the case, it's much harder to argue one way or the other.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's hear Dylan's top 5. I'm ready. I've been waiting too long.
We'll get Dylan's take on this one first and then go into his top 5.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right. So on that topic, I think it is unfair to biological females to be competing in an event that's supposed to be biological females, and now males are introduced as transgender. Now, I understand. I don't have anything against transgender, but it's physically unfair. So I just kind of feel that transgender in
athletics,
transgender in athletics should have its own category.
In competitive athletics.
Yeah,
anyway.
Because I just feel it's unfair. And that's literally my only take on it. I don't really want to get too much into it.
Right. I don't have anything against them as people either. Just from the comp, because Minneapolis is full of transgender people. It's a hub. The number of people that I've been introduced to or just run into is far greater here than any other place that I've been. So not a big deal. They're people, of course, but when it comes to an athletic event and they have an unfair advantage, struggle with that. And I think that was Kyle's points as well, where he's saying, okay, if these two happen to be on top and there is an equal proportion of transgender men who are also, didn't even make the race or, something, I'm totally on board. But
you can look at the statistical distribution of their results and you can tell if it's unfair or not.
With what little information I have, it would be unfair. And I might be wrong, and if I am, I will be the first to admit it and apologize. But until proven otherwise, I think it's unfair. And I think we're in consensus on that.
All right. So for my top 5. So how did you guys start this off last episode?
You can start with number 1 or number 5, whatever you think will make your list more entertaining.
Okay.
Although I would like to know if the order matters, because technically the order on
Brent's.
mine and or Brent's doesn't necessarily matter. He
Okay,
did a nice job.
Mine does matter. So all right. So for my number 1 is PUBG Battlegrounds. My number 2, FIFA 18. Number 3, Grand Theft Auto 5. My number 4, Call of Duty Black Ops 4. Number 5, Red Dead Redemption 2.
I feel like the easy answer is favorite video games.
Negative.
Ooh.
Games on Xbox One.
Also negative.
You list them out again, please.
PUBG, FIFA 18, Grand Theft Auto 5, Call of Duty Black Ops 4, Red Dead Redemption 2.
The odds of you kicking a soccer ball in a game.
I'm sorry, what was that?
What was number 1 FIFA?
Number 1 was PUBG.
Ooh, never mind. All right.
Ooh, now we have to get into the yes or no question where we're kind of dumb.
Does it have to do with the players of the games?
It does not.
Does it have to deal with release date at all?
It does not.
Does it have to do with your preference towards them?
It does not.
Yeah, that throws it off.
Does it have to do with number of players Like
does
players
not.
of the game. Ooh, interesting.
Does that have to do with how much money the game has earned?
Ding, 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 ding.
Oh,
Ooh, I'm onto something.
Yep.
Let's
Top
do it one more
earning video
time.
games
Nailed it.
of 2019 or 2018.
The results for 2019 are obviously not out yet. So this is top games by revenue for 2018.
Wait,
Number
so
one.
you're saying Redemption didn't win?
No, PUBG in 2018 has made over $1 billion.
yeah, the Battle Royales crushed it.
FIFA 18 has made 790 million. Grand Theft Auto 5 has made 628 million. Call of Duty Black Ops 4 has made 612 million, and Red Dead Redemption 2 has made 516 million.
And this is on the Xbox, right? Well,
I'm really surprised Fortnite's not up there.
I do not think it's. I think it's overall. I don't think it's like specific.
Okay, it's not like
it's for both PC and consoles.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's got to be worldwide. Otherwise, FIFA I don't think would be as high in America.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I knew FIFA was big, but I didn't think it was. I mean, that's competing with some huge names.
I mean, a lot of people play FIFA, but in the United States, it's not very big. But in the rest of the world, like FIFA is really popular.
I can see it. Soccer is really big. Or
imagine if Madden was a worldwide sport. Like if football was American football was more widely accepted, Madden would be, worldwide absolutely huge. But it's the inverse, where the entire world loves soccer except the US. It's the Madden of soccer.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's actually a pretty well done game.
Yep. So those are just like the premium games. So those are like the games that like are obviously
AAA titles.
Exactly. Now there are games that are free to play that have made more money than they have. For example, Fortnite.
Okay,
yep.
Fortnite's free to play.
Fortnite,
okay, I got you.
Yep, Fortnite's free to play. They've made 2.4 billion. That's insane. And then Dungeon Fighter Online. Have you ever even heard?
No.
That's number 2. Dungeon Fighter Online is at 1.5 billion.
Maybe we'll have to check it out and play it.
Yep. And then League of Legends, obviously, 1.4. Pokemon Go, 1.3. Crossfire, 1.3. Honor of Kings, 1.3. The majority of these games I've never even heard of. Fate Grand Order, 1.2
I would imagine
billion.
that games like that have a really large Asian following.
Candy Crush.
I feel like that's
1.1 billion.
I feel like the Chinese market alone is just ginormous, and probably accounts for a lot. Like if you can get a game to be big overseas, you're set.
That was a good top 5.
The reason why I didn't go with the free to play games are because like one, we don't know most of them. We really know like the big blockbusters. Like we know like the big premium games. But with the ones that have made more money, like we haven't even heard of.
You just go like crazy specific list. Top grossing games that I know of and I enjoy.
And have a color in their name.
Yeah, right? Just making a very just obscure
I was gonna
category.
go with the 5 best jelly bean flavors ranked by the author of Reader's Digest, but I figured that would be kind of
a little out there.
Yeah. So I went with something that was a little more relevant to what I like.
Good top 5, Dylan.
Thank you.
With that in mind, folks, that was episode 51 of If I May. I hope you all enjoyed. We have new episodes every Thursday. Feel free to support our shenanigans. We have merchandise available. Subscribe. Yeah, we're going to subscribe, share, rate, and review at your leisure. If you want to get in contact with us to give us ideas for topics you want to hear of in future episodes, DM us on Twitter at Zarubust or email zarubust@gmail.com. I hope you all have a great Thursday, and we will see you next week.